Here we are, approaching the end of the first week of the second Trump term. And while the world seems to be focusing on Elon's hand gestures, Melania's hat, and all the sound and fury of a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen presidential executive orders, let's focus in on the ongoing conflict of major significance, the war in Ukraine. Because Trump promised big for his intent to end the war. And while my prediction that this wasn't going to be done, as he suggested, within the first day was possibly the easiest prediction ever, there are some early interesting indicators, but it's worth reviewing. Where we were a few months before the election was that much of the MAGA world was simply against American support for Ukraine. Figures like Tucker Carlson were increasingly simply pro-Putin and pro-Russia, perhaps feeding off Trump's previous comments about how much he admired Putin's leadership. And so you had, when the election took place, social media posts such as the ones by Donald Trump Jr., the then president-elect's son, tweeting mocking and obnoxious posts aimed at Ukrainian leader President Zelensky. And this all fed the reasonable fear that Trump's vision for achieving an end to the war in one day would be to simply withdraw American support and to force Ukraine to capitulate to Putin as a consequence. If that had been Putin's hope, it was likely dashed this week, as Trump changed the tune significantly. In comments to reporters, he said that he saw that Zelensky wanted a deal to end the war, but that Putin apparently did not. And he made pointedly critical remarks about Putin as a result. I think he should make a deal. I think he's destroying Russia by not making a deal. He said he can't be thrilled, he's not doing so well. Russia is bigger, they have more soldiers to lose, but that's no way to run a country. He added to his verbal comments with a post on Truth Social. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and have always had a very good relationship with President Putin. All of that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse. If we don't make a deal, and soon, I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. He then concluded arguably with a Hollywood cliche. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, and the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. This intervention shook Vladimir Putin exactly as you would expect, i.e., not in the slightest. Putin's media mouthpiece Dmitry Peskov told Russian state media, "We do not see any particular new elements there." Based on the news coverage of the last couple of years, you might suggest that, well, he has a point. After all, hasn't the West been applying sanctions against Russia since the start of the war? I mean, what's left for Trump to do that would even make any more difference on top of that? That is actually a more interesting question than you might think. Two factors. One, the Biden administration and Europe had actually gone a lot more softly on sanctions than they liked to project out to the world at large. And two, if you ignore the bluster of the Kremlin and look at the evidence, there are signs that Russia's economy is weakened to the degree it would potentially be more susceptible. So let's start with the first. The official line is, quote from the galloping midgets at the European Council, "Since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on 24 February 2022, the EU has imposed, bold text, massive and unprecedented sanctions against Russia." Have they, though? I mean, really? It did not sanction Russia's sale of gas, provided easily sidestep measures in large part on oil, meaning that the continuing sale of fossil fuels continued to feed Putin's war economy. It theoretically banned the import of various technological and other goods, but those have been a minor annoyance at best by all accounts. All you have to do is look at how various countries' exports to places like Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkey, they all shot up after so-called sanctions were imposed. Countries like Germany and China and a host of others have been enjoying trading with friends of Russia at significant volume, whilst hypocritically boasting about how savage their sanctions are. Hence, since the invasion, Russia's GDP is 5% up, that of Ukraine's is down by 26%. And hence, when Ukrainian scientists study some of the Russian missiles and other hardware, they report all the tech that they find that's not supposed to be there, from Sony, from Bosch, from Chinese companies, and so on. It's all making its way there, and it's all getting used. According to the Diplomat website, the Biden administration had, quote, accepted Central Asia's difficult geopolitical position and tried to find nuanced ways to restrict Russia via sanctions without alienating the governments of Central Asia. Now, it does seem as though Trump may have this in his sights, should he end up taking action. And it seems likely he would be a lot less inclined to care a huge amount about what the governments of Central Asia would think about it. He also told the World Economic Forum in Davos that he would aim to bring down the price of oil, saying, if the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Interestingly, some of Trump's allies, who have been exploring the pro-Putin curve in the belief this was the direction of travel, have all been somewhat wrong-footed by this. For example, Hungary's Viktor Orban had been threatening to block the EU from renewing its sanctions against Russia. According to Politico, Trump's Truth Social post on Putin appeared on the Wednesday. On the Thursday, diplomats in Brussels were saying that they were hearing that Hungary was ready to withdraw its threat of veto. Awkward? Now, will any of this survive Trump talking directly with Putin, or even meeting with him? Who knows? I don't know. Putin doesn't know. Zelensky doesn't know. Almost certainly Trump himself doesn't know. Trump has flip-flopped on major positions in the past. He has stormed ahead on other positions. Nobody knows what the heck he will do. But the period of looming menacingly is over, so the talks will happen and Trump will have to decide what he's actually going to do. Conventionally, we would all imagine that Putin will be unlikely to shift his position just in the face of threats of sanctions, having cause to feel that he can hold out under their weight for longer than Ukraine can resist him on the battlefield. Seems to be the current evidence. Of course, sometimes countries can look solid and they look solid and they look solid until one day they collapse like a house of cards. It's kind of what happened to the Soviet Union. And it could be that Trump's references to Russia's disastrous economy come because he's had the briefings suggesting that Russia is not far away from that today. Maybe. Just yesterday, Reuters reported that it had spoken with a number of Kremlin insiders who reported that Putin has grown increasingly concerned about the real state of Russia's wartime economy. While reporting that the economy has grown robustly in spite of existing sanctions, thanks to all that fossil fuel, nevertheless, he is aware that the dominance of the war economy is distorting the real picture. Domestic activity has become strained in recent months by labour shortages, high interest rates and inflation that has shot up under the record military spending. Reportedly, Putin had a meeting at the Kremlin with business leaders on December the 16th, where he scolded top economic officials and otherwise showed his frustration. He was said to be visibly displeased after hearing private investment was being cut because of the cost of credit. Now, is any of that significant? Is it not significant? It's the sort of evidence that were Russia to suddenly collapse in its resolve or its ability to pursue the war, people would point at it and say, there you go, all the signs were there. But at the same time, it could just be noise mixed in with Western wishful thinking that ultimately signifies nothing. It's always easy to be wise after the event. But assuming Trump has had similar briefings in the White House, it may well persuade him that the fastest way to fulfill his promise to end the war quickly, without taking the position in the historical record as the man who betrayed Ukraine, is to brush aside all the feeble excuses in the sanctions regime, to hit Russia a lot harder by putting pressure on all of the allies who have so far been helping it through, or at least threaten to do so to Vladimir Putin in a face-to-face, who may only be too well aware that his country is closer to the end of its tether than he would ever admit in public. The thing is that Putin seems likely to believe that if the war is ended, with Russia holding onto the territory it currently holds, and with a guarantee that Ukraine will not be able to join NATO, he will be able to claim victory of a sort. Wouldn't satisfy all, but it would satisfy enough. But any outcome less than that will be inescapably some level of defeat, and the appearance of weakness that would entail would possibly be terminal to his ability to maintain his position. So whatever comes next will be played as an extremely high-stakes game by everyone except arguably by Trump, who is entirely capable of throwing a metaphorical hand grenade into the mix just out of curiosity to see how it will shake things up. As of today, we remain in the position where, although a lot feels as though it has changed, right now, nothing has changed. But the chances seem increasing, one way or another, for better or for worse.